Okay, so what I'm going to do is, it's a bit brutal, but I'm going to mute you all just because you've got so many people on the call. If anybody wants to say anything at any stage and interrupt the presentation, then just ideally press the automatic hand, which you can get in the reactions at the bottom of the screen. It is a fairly lengthy presentation, but hopefully it's going to be an interesting one. Is that? That again. Okay, so just again, my name is Peter Travis. I'm one of the 4 co-chairs of the Somerset Bus Partnership. Just a few words on the Somerset Bus Partnership. We are a team of volunteers. We have a relationship with the Somerset County Council. Our 4 district co-chairs are on the Somerset Bus Advisory Board, and Tony Rees and I are chair and vice chair of the Somerset Bus Users and Stakeholders Group. But we're not part of Somerset County Council. We are just enthusiasts and campaigners for buses. And we've been going about 20 months. And we set up the organization because Bus Back Better was announced, which promised a new era for buses across England. And we thought that there should be a voice for bus users across the county. We now have something like 150 local representatives in Somerset, and we have 7 bus user groups, 6 of which we set up this year in Somerset, and we've become a very, very active group, and we've engaged with Somerset County Council extensively. So Bus Back Better promised this new era for buses, and Somerset took this on with a very ambitious bus service improvement plan, which they presented just over 12 months ago to the Department for Transport, asking for an eye-watering 165 million or so pounds of grants from the government to transform Somerset's bus services. Now, there was a very good reason, or a series of reasons, why they asked for quite so much money. Somerset's bus services are the worst rated in the country, in England. We have the 2nd lowest number of passenger journeys per head in England, and some nearly 50% of carbon emissions in Somerset comes from transport. So it was a well-based proposition to the government, but we only got some. Can people see the presentation?
No.
No, we can't. No.
Can't see the presentation.
Oh dear. Let's see what we do about that.
Looks like it's just buffering.
Let's try again.
It's up now, Pete.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, that's better than looking at my face anyway. Sorry about that. The wonders of technology. So picking up the Somerset County Council's BSIT, 163 million. They got an award of 12 million. And there's two ways of looking at it. It's either a half full or a half empty glass, because 2/3 of the local authorities who bid got nothing, and 12 million was nothing like we wanted, but it was still 12 million, which the government gave us. So it was a step forward. But the big challenge when the awards were being made was that COVID had struck, and COVID has transformed the state of public transport in the country. A lot of people during COVID, but more significantly, are continuing to work 1, 2, 3, 4 days from home and not traveling in to work. Also, because the government emphasized for 12 months or so just how dangerous, because of the COVID epidemic, it was to use both trains and buses, there are still a lot of people who are reluctant to use public transport. And so both the train and the bus industry have suffered. And part of the reason why I talk about this being a forthcoming crisis is undoubtedly the consequences of COVID, which have had such an impact on our lives and are continuing to do so. So the bus industry, beware of a possible crisis ahead. And I'm very glad that we've got so many, now 100 participants on this call, because it shows that you're concerned about the crisis that might be falling upon us. So what did COVID do? Well, you can see what it did to bus usership. It literally meant that bus patronage fell off the side of a cliff. It did, as you can see, bounce back quite significantly, but well below the levels of the pre-COVID era. And the very latest figures show that bus numbers are still down. This was from what, last week. Bus passenger numbers outside of London still some 25% below the pre-COVID levels. And in rural areas like a county like Somerset, could be as much as 30% below the pre-COVID levels. And at the same time, the operating costs for the bus companies have absolutely soared. If we look at what First was paying its drivers back in 2019, they were advertising at 24,000. They're now advertising at 27,000. And as some of you will have experienced, there have been industrial action because there is a lot of pressure, mounting pressure, to increase the wages of those drivers. And many of us think they deserve it too. But they've increased by 13%, but the huge driver is, of course, fuel prices, which have risen by getting on for 50%. So when we look at the situation, we have bus operators with a business challenge. Bus passenger numbers are down by some 25%, and their operating costs are up as much as 40%. And as bus operators will often tell you, bus companies are only in business to do one thing, which is to make profits. They're not to run social services. They're certainly not to subsidize the services that they operate. They're there to make money. And with a situation like 25% reduced fare take and 40% increase in operating costs, how is it that buses are still operating across Somerset? And the answer to that, quite simply, is they're operating because the bus recovery grant, which is a grant from central government, is funding them to make their businesses viable. And buses across the country would not be operating without this bus recovery grant. It's been more than 2 years now of subsidies from the government to operate our bus services, and also the train services, who get far bigger subsidies, because the cost of keeping the trains running costs a lot more than it does keep the buses running. And 2/3 of the subsidy has come from the original £3 billion, which was going to transform our buses. One of the reasons why there were so few grants available is that 2 billion of the, or almost 2 billion of the 3 billion has gone to keep those buses running for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the latest and updated package started running in October, but it only goes as far forward as March 2023. So 5 months' time, this bus recovery grant is set to come to an end. Now, Mr. Sunak and his team is wrestling at the moment, as we hear him on the news all the time, about what they do about the economic crisis that the country is faced with. And there is a lot of talk, and undoubtedly there will be a lot of action in terms of cutting back on public expenditure. Whether the government will be prepared to extend the bus recovery grant after March 2023 is very uncertain. So what will happen after March? Will buses still operate across Somerset? Well, it's not as though Somerset County Council will be in a position to step in and subsidise lots of bus services. The Unitary Council offered major savings, and it was hoped that some of those savings could be used to help support our bus services in Somerset. But because inflation has got so rampant, and because of the statutory services that Somerset has to supply, those savings have been more than taken up by the increased costs that Somerset is bearing. So Somerset isn't going to be able to subsidise lots more bus services, and given the increased cost of the services it does subsidise, it may well find it can't even subsidise as many as it did do. Which is why we decided to call this meeting, to see what we could do as people concerned about buses. The fact that you've come to this meeting indicates you're concerned about buses. Many of you are involved in local government and very active within the communities where you live. What can we do to make a difference? Well, the first thing we can do is lobby our politicians. And there's nothing like starting at the top. The gentleman who's overseeing the way forward with cuts is the Prime Minister. A note to the Prime Minister about the importance of maintaining subsidies on buses wouldn't be a bad thing. A note to Mark Harper, who is the newly appointed Transport Secretary. He's a West Country man. His constituency is West Gloucestershire. So he'll know something of the challenges that a rural local transport authority like Somerset faces, because I'm sure Gloucestershire faces many of the same challenges. Or you could write, as I know some of you have done because we've asked you to write to her previously, Baroness Vere. Baroness Vere is actually quite a remarkable buses minister. She survived 3 prime ministers. She was there in Boris's day. She stayed there during Liz Truss, and her appointment has been confirmed. She's not in the House of Commons, she's in the Lords, but she's a very good person to write to. And she's now got a lot of experience on the bus industry. But we need to influence government policy, because the best outcome would be that the bus support grant was extended beyond March. But that's going to be a tough political battle to win. And that's why we need our MPs. The 5 MPs who cover the Somerset County Council area, 3 of them have been active on buses. James Heapy has been active, very active in the Wells area, campaigning very visibly for the 126. Marcus Fish has recently got engaged with the Somerset Bus Partnership in the Yeovil area. Yeovil suffered a lot of bus cuts. And David Warburton, who sadly isn't active at the moment, has been a bus campaigner in his time. I'm not sure about the stance of Rebecca Rowe and Ian Little-Granger on buses. I did read that only a small number of our MPs, according to the Leveller, had done anything about asking for the previous extension to the bus services grant. We do need all of our MPs to lobby government at this time to do that. So one of the most urgent and pressing things is to email your MP. And that's very easily done. You can get the address off the House of Commons website, and you just state that you're one of his constituents in your email, and now would be a very good time to do it. But if that bus user grant isn't extended, the only solution really is to use buses more and to get people to use buses more. Because if we don't, we are going to lose lots of buses throughout Somerset. Which is why Somerset County Council has taken the unusual step to launch an advertising campaign to encourage most of us to get out and go by bus, leave the car at home and to go by bus. It's a campaign which started in August and is now extending into the new, through the financial year. And we've been involved with it. We've not financed it, only as ratepayers anyway. But we've been involved with the campaign. We very strongly endorse its aims, and we hope that it will continue to be very visible across the county. But the people on this call, almost by definition, are local activists. Many of you will be local councillors, parish councillors, town councillors, district councillors. I know we've got some county councillors and some in senior positions in their parties on the council as well. We're very pleased you're here because you are the sort of community leaders we need to decide what your communities can do to boost bus patronage on our bus routes, because it will be individual bus routes which will be deemed not to be commercially viable and which will go. So if we can get those routes going through our communities to have more passengers, we stand a much better chance of keeping those bus routes after March next year. So what's the first and most important thing? The first and most important and most basic thing for anybody to be able to go on a bus is to know the times of buses. Now you might think that that's the job of a bus company, and I've told quite often that that is what bus companies should do, and they should market themselves. And surely the most basic thing about marketing themselves is making sure that everybody who wants to go on a bus knows the times of their buses. But sadly, they don't do that. Some bus companies don't even produce timetables, and the timetables which are produced by some companies don't actually get out in the numbers that are needed. But the most basic thing is every bus stop ought to have a current, correct bus timetable. But I'm sure if you look round in your local area, there'll be many bus stops which don't have even a somewhat battered timetable case like this one. And this was a very typical example, one I took in Wales, and it was showing a bus timetable which was 18 months out of date. And what I would ask everyone on this call to do, whatever else you might or might not be able to do, but the one thing I would ask you to do is tomorrow go and have a look at some of the timetables on the bus stops near you. And if they haven't got the correct timetable on, could you please go and print off a timetable from one of the bus users' websites or from Bus Times and put it inside a plastic sleeve and go and stick it on the bus stop, so that as many bus stops as we can ensure that they've got up-to-date, correct and current timetables. One lady discovered that there aren't correct bus timetables up in Frome, and so she wrote to the local newspaper. It would have been actually more constructive, more helpful if she'd actually taken the trouble to go and stick up the notice themselves, because I'm sorry to say that those bus timetables in Frome 10 days later are still not correct. We in the Somerset Bus Partnership have been busy over the last 6 weeks because it's been a Catch the Bus month. We've actually had a longer than normal bus month. It ran for 6 weeks. We ran more bus stalls for Catch the Bus month than any other county in the country. And we had thousands of requests for bus timetables. People came to our stalls, they were interested. They told us about their buses, they complained about their buses in some cases, but the one thing nearly everyone wanted was a printed bus timetable. And we had them there. In many cases, we'd printed them themselves. In other cases, we'd gone to the bus operators and collected them because people couldn't get those printed bus timetables anywhere else, so they had to get them from us. And it was a major benefit that we could provide, which our people from across Somerset at the various bus stalls could provide to people who really were very grateful for getting that information. People need to have a printed bus timetable at home. And so we're going to be running our bus months, not just in September. Now every month in Somerset needs to be a Catch the Bus month, and we'll carry on with activities like that as long as the weather allows through the balance of this year with our bus user groups. The other thing we'd like you to consider doing with your local council, probably your parish council or your town council, is thinking about producing a local bus timetable, an easy to use, customized bus timetable, which can be door dropped to every home. so that every home has a list of all the buses in your immediate neighborhood, the times that they go and collect people and where they take them, and the times that from those destinations they leave to return people to your neighborhood. In my village in Road in northeast Somerset, northwest Somerset, no, northeast Somerset, get it right. In Road, we've been doing this for some years now. I actually print this on PowerPoint. You could do it in Word. You could do it in a designer piece of software. It's pretty easy to do. And it costs our local parish council £160 each time for 700, 800 copies. And then each of the parish councillors goes and door drops it to every home in their locality, so that every house has a local bus timetable. Our pub, our local shop also have them. And the thanks we get from local residents is, I mean, it's one of the best things the local council, the parish council does. We get a lot of praise, a lot of appreciation for providing that service. It's a highly valued service. Frome is looking at doing this. They've done it in the past. They're looking at producing one. So towns can do it also. A bit more complicated with towns because they have a lot more bus routes, a lot more neighborhoods, but it can be done. It's really good to show a town map showing all the routes as well. It would cost more than £160 for a town, but then their budgets are that much more. Not all the local councils are going to do it, but believe me, if you do it, your local residents will show their appreciation. So that's what we can do individually and with our local councils. And that's about the printed message, but we want to reach further than just giving hard copy timetables to people. We want to reach out. There are two forms of media that you can get. One is bought media. That's when you advertise, and the Somerset Bus Partnership doesn't have the money to advertise. And then there's something called earned media, when because of your hard work or your inspiration, your creativity, you can actually get the media to write and show interest and to attract attention. And one of the best routes to do it is through Facebook. Love it or hate it, Facebook can be a very powerful medium. Most towns have got Facebook pages with many thousands, 10,000 followers. Villages have often got Facebook followings of 1,000 or 2,000. You can reach a lot of people, and it's a great way of just reminding people about buses when bus times change, or if there are issues with buses, you can post on Facebook. If somebody is posting about an event taking place locally, you could always add a post to their post saying, this is the local bus that you could get, which will get you to that event and get you back from that event. And you can reach a lot of people. A colleague of mine put a post out this in August of this year, and it reached 50,000 people. And it did that because people saw the post and then they thought they would share it to another Facebook page, and it got shared and shared and shared. And so 50,000 people is a bigger reach than any newspaper has got in Somerset. Now, not every one of our posts has that sort of circulation, but it shows the potential of Facebook. And Facebook is used by our bus user groups. As I mentioned, we've now got 7 bus user groups across the county. The long established one is the one in Frome. It's getting on for 1,000 followers. But what's remarkable, the one in Yeovil, and I see we've got Linda Snelling on the call. Welcome, Linda. They've only been going a couple of months and they've already got nearly 700 members. And it's a way, again, setting up a local Facebook group about buses is a way of keeping people informed, getting them engaged, and making them active on buses. And just interesting to note that the Yeovil one, where we've had major issues with bus cuts and yet more bus cuts potentially threatened, we now have Marcus Fish, their MP this month, in his column doing what I'm trying to do this evening, is to get more people to make use of buses. And it's great to see Marcus Fish endorsing that. And mentioning MPs, James Heapy in Wells, one of his critics alleged, I'm not sure it was true, that James Heapy didn't know where the Wells bus station was. Well, he certainly does now, because he's become a very active campaigner for buses in Wells, as indeed has the Lib Dems in Wells. And that's thanks to our Wells Bus User Group, which has led the campaigns for both the 173 and the 126 in Wells. And David Warburton has long been a big campaigner for buses. So going right back to the beginning, those MPs can get behind buses, and they are important to allies in trying to influence central government policy. Local media, there's the local press, there's local radio, parish magazines, council newsletters and websites. They're an opportunity for you. Nearly I think every one of the towns in Somerset has a local newspaper. And most of those newspapers are wanting editorial material, something we call content. If you can make the story interesting enough, then they're going to write about you. And they are interested in buses because a lot of their readers are interested in buses. And what's interesting too is that it's not just a printed version. This is the website of the Wells Voice. And they ran a printed story and then they put it on their website, which then got retweeted and reposted elsewhere too. So there are real benefits in talking to local reporters. The local editor, very often in the case of local newspapers, is very approachable. And if you can give him a story, then he'll run with it. And Somerset Live, they certainly know how to write attention-grabbing news stories, and they are the online version of many of the local newspapers from across the county. And then something very different, but they are a useful way of reaching often what is a very socially engaged demographic. Some cases, a demographic which isn't using online, so it's another way of reaching more of the potential audience. Parish magazines. Most parish magazines are just coming out today and tomorrow and this week, but their December issues will be put to bed in a couple of weeks' time. So there's no better time than to write an article now, send it to the editor of your parish magazine and get it included in the next issue, which will be the December issue. One of the things all newspapers, all magazine owners and websites and Facebook pages are searching for is interesting content. And interesting content often means news stories. And sometimes it can be a big story. Here in Frome, when we saved the evening bus, it made the front page lead story of the local weekly newspaper. In Yeovil, it was actually news about the campaign, which gave them a big splash in their local newspaper. But also in Yeovil, they ran the Catch the Bus campaign, a children's drawing competition, which made some really great Facebook material which they could post. So it's all different news stories. It's a matter of finding a story which is either going to interest the audience on Facebook so it gets shared and put on lots of different Facebook pages, or it's an interesting real news story which a local journalist will then pick up and run for you. And we in Somerset Bus Partnership have got various pieces of artwork which we can make available. Just contact us. We can send you digital versions which you then can use in print materials or online or in social media. Finally, as many of you will be councillors, you'll have a council website for sure, possibly a council newspaper. Are bus times on your council website? Well, they ought to be, because there are many out-of-date bus timetables online. Not only are there some out-of-date bus timetables at bus stops, but sadly, some of the bus operators haven't cleared out-of-date bus timetables, and it can be confusing to people not to know whether they're looking at a current website, a current timetable on their website, or an out-of-date one. If your local parish, town, district council puts timetables up on their council website, then people will know that that's a trusted source and that they're seeing the latest timetable. Local events, lots of councils organise, sponsor and support local events. Those events should always show how to get there by bus. Increasingly that's happening with private enterprises across the country. We should just make sure that we as councillors are doing that with any events that we should run. And it's no bad thing, particularly on a council website, to show that councillors do use the bus. And our leader of Somerset County Council, who happens to be a big bus user, Councillor Bill Revens, is shown here riding a bus. So I've gone through a whole list of different activities that could be done to promote buses, to try and protect them within your communities. What each council we would urge do is to allocate that responsibility for promoting buses to a project leader, so that somebody takes the responsibility for the task. We call them bus champions, and we see them as being the local bus champions. Might be one person, it might be a couple, it might be a small group. But what we're looking for is for each parish council, each town council, to allocate the responsibility for champion buses within their area, because it will be ensuring that the immediately local buses are used more, that will give the opportunity of maintaining more bus services for your community. So there is every good reason why we should be champion buses and have somebody who is a bus champion within the area. One thing that we're looking at because evening bus services are under threat on the Frome to Bath link, we're looking at producing for December, the month of December, where there are going to be an awful lot of evening activities, many of which will involve drinking. We're going to put together a program, a directory of things happening in Frome, happening in Bath, happening in the hostelries along the bus route, and we're going to publish it and we're going to circulate it, encouraging people to go by bus so that they can drink, they don't have to worry about driving back. And we're going to reach out and try and encourage new people to start to use the bus. Another thing of getting new people to go by bus is getting local groups, maybe senior groups, or it may be mothers and children, and persuading them to use the bus and go to a destination. Might be going to do Christmas shopping in Frome or wherever in your local town, and to use the bus to do it, and to do it as a group, to try and again get new people to discover what it's like to go by bus. It's interesting how many people who haven't gone by bus say, you know, you see so much more when you're being driven on a bus than when you're sitting behind a steering wheel in a car. And coming to the end now, coming soon, what news will we have for the campaign once we get on into the new year? Well, we're going to have cheaper fares on buses, because come January through to March, we have a program being financed. We hope it's going to continue to be, I think it will be, a 3-month campaign of all local bus fares being just £2. It's a great opportunity to get more people onto buses. A lot of people will be encouraged to go by bus because of the cost of living crisis, perhaps a fair few because of the climate crisis, but it will be offering even better value for money come January with £2 flat fare for buses. And if you're lucky and live in Taunton, very shortly they're going to be announcing the start date of the £1 fare, which applies just for buses within Taunton. But buses within Taunton will be just £1 single fare. So real cost of living benefit for travelling by buses across the county, but particularly in Taunton. So what we need is a bus champion in each village, each town. Perhaps in the town, we need 2 or 3 bus champions because the task is that much bigger. But that's what we need. That's what we would invite you to consider. And now we're going to open it up for questions and comments. Brownie.
As always, an absolute pleasure to see what the bus partnership are doing, Peter. And you're coming along to Travel Watch, not this Friday coming, but one afterwards. And I really hope that councillors and also other user groups will come along and learn a little bit about how to do the job really well, to get in the room with the people to organise operations. I suppose as Travel Watch, one of the things we do is talk to the DFT based on the remit given to us by you as users. And what I was going to just add into the mix here, and absolutely endorsing what Peter said, write to your MPs. I was at a rail thing the other day, but this applies to bus too. Bus is my first love. Peter Wilkinson from Rail was saying that in arguing for his budget with the Treasury, they really needed to make the economic case for keeping the funding that they had. Well, the same applies to bus. So when you write your letter, please say it matters, and don't mention, you can mention the one person, you can give a single case scenario, but actually if you tell your elected MP that it is all the nurses in a particular area, or it is all the kids who lack opportunity, then they can go to their levelling up person, they can go to, you know, they have a cause to follow, they understand why they're being asked to campaign on behalf of bus, because bus is a bit of a mystery to many people, but it is so essential to so many others. So, you know, talk to your, if you're a councillor, talk to your constituents if you don't know about what it does to people, but go and, I just want to say, just really go and make this case and explain why it matters to your community, so they understand that there actually is a social value and an economic value. It isn't just saying, please don't take our bus services away. And I think when it comes to funding the evening services, you know, the moment they hear that, well, as soon as my evening services are gone, I really won't bother with using the daytime services because I'm going to have an alternative form of transport. Suddenly, you know, the whole thing comes together. You know, behave like you're talking to your, you know, perhaps not so sharp or just very innocent little brother or sister when you were a child years ago, explaining how the world works, because that is, it sounds awfully patronising, but that is a really good way forward. And I can see, I really want to mention Linda quickly here, because the work you're doing is so, I've seen so many really positive posts recently, and there are a few other user groups. Travel Watch works across the Hawaii to Southwest region, and we've got a few which are complaining groups, and my God, you know, complaining is a really important part of it. But actually, if we want people to use services, you have to be forever the optimist. You may be the cold and the wet optimist a lot of the time, but if we don't use it, we lose it. And it's a really important message to carry through. I'm going to shut up, hand over, and I really hope all of you will look us up on Eventbrite or through any of these partnership pages and come along to the meeting. And I'm going to hand back to your meeting now, but you are my favourite bus group.
Thank you, Brownie. So Brownie is the coordinator, the driver in many ways of Travel Watch Southwest. Really interesting meeting coming up in 2 weeks' time. So go into their website. We'll also put it on the Somerset Bus Partnership, details of how you can link into their online meeting. By the way, if you haven't put your name, your parish council or town council and your email on the chat, please do that. Now going to go to the Conservative lead councillor on the Somerset County Council on Transport, Diogo Rodriguez. Good to see you here on the call, Diogo. Over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Really nice to hear all the suggestions that have come out today, and lots of really good ideas as to what we as individuals, as for like say regular people, what we can do to try and increase bus usage. But I just had a couple of questions really, which I don't know if you can answer or answer at a different time, but worth putting it out to the group as well. You spoke about things that what we can do to increase bus usage. And part of me is, and I probably would say this as the opposition spokesman for transport, I would say this, that there is an underspend at the Somerset County Council on concessionary bus fares, because not enough people with concessionary bus fares are using their fares. And actually there's a question to be put to Somerset County Council as what can we do what can the County Council do to kind of get that money used up? For example, can the council encourage or ask concessionary bus fares or put in place for those fares to be used before 9:30 AM, because that can be done. It's discretionary, it's up to each individual council, because that could increase bus usage, even if it was for a short period of time as a trial to increase bus usage. That's possible, there's money there to be used, specifically for concessionary bus fares. The second one I had as well is, we're talking about bus companies who are private bus companies, they're there for business. And my question, and you might have an answer for me, is what are private bus companies doing themselves to increase their business? As a business owner myself, you know, if business isn't doing well, I've got to do what I can to make sure that business succeeds. And so what are those companies doing? Are they doing anything? Do we need to pressure them on what they can or should be doing? Because I haven't heard that today. The third question I had was on the Busset campaign, which was great, really great to see. But I wondered if we have any kind of metric at the moment as to whether that's been successful compared to, compared to around the country, if you will, whether we've seen an increase in bus usage as a result of that Busset campaign. You might have the answer. The reason I'm asking that is because if not, money be used in a different way, but you might have the answer for me. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Diogo. Very briefly, concessionary fares across the country, bus operators are reporting that seniors are have proved to be the most reluctant demographic to come back to using buses, and I'm afraid it's uncertainty about the risks of COVID. Specifically, I know that Somerset County Council, because they've got the database of everyone who's got a concessionary pass, is going to mail everyone on that database, encourage them to get back onto buses. The worst of COVID is behind us, and whilst it's not risk-free, there's nothing in life that is risk-free. So things are being done. I think that it was some years ago that the 9:30 limit was reintroduced. It's a possibility that it could be changed again, but the problem is that the early morning buses are still at peak capacity. It's daytime buses where there's lots of capacity. As for bus companies, are they doing enough? Someone who's spent his life in advertising and marketing, I'm astonished at how little money and effort and management time in bus companies is spent on advertising and marketing. They are primarily operating companies. They're very good at running buses. They're not so good at getting information out about buses. How often have you seen campaigns on television or anywhere for promoting buses? It just doesn't happen, which is why we as community players, people active in our community, have to produce timetables, have to put information up at bus stops. Some of my colleagues tell me it's not a job we should be doing, the bus companies should do it. My answer to that, well, if they're not doing it, then we have to step in. As for the metric on the Busset campaign, I know Mike Rigby is having a meeting this week, and I know he's asking that same question: is, has the campaign worked? How do we know it's delivering results? Let's assess it. So I think that's ongoing. Moving on, David Redwell. David Redwell is a very well-known transport campaigner in the Southwest. I think Dave is actually calling from his hospital bed, but David, good to hear from you. How are you?
Well, I'm surviving, except I'm in a hospital where most of the bus services have been withdrawn, so it's difficult to get from. This is the main Somerset hospital, as probably most people know, and yeah, there's only one service left out of 4 now. So that shows the level of withdrawal the north of the county had in Baines and the North Somerset area, and I believe Western hospitals also had cutbacks. So if you, just an example of that, if you live in Cheddar or Axbridge and your hospital happens to be Western-super-Mare, at the moment you've got no bus. So that's where we've gone. That's where we shouldn't be. On the issue of just marketing, I just wanted to say we did spend an awful lot of money in the summer on leaflets, and First Group actually bought an awful lot of TV time across the Southwest on West Country Television, advertising bus services and days out by bus, which was very, very good. I think the DFT paid in the background. I'm not quite sure how it got paid for, but I think it was the Department of Transport, to be honest. But I am very worried about the bleak situation we're into next, because we have to raise that money. Now, one thing with Somerset and North Somerset and with WECA, which is obviously covers the historic Somerset area, we need to make sure all their precepts, Peter, all the budget precepts and all the budgets build in the buses and public transport, so that as they migrate the 4 unitaries into Somerset County, as North Somerset and WECA sets its budgets, that we have budgets there to cover the loss, the revenue support services, because even the D2, which is after Froome, which the Mayor and Mike Rigby saved, and the Wales to Axbridge bus, that's only saved until 31st of March. And what the Mayor has said to me, the whole thing's in threat on the 1st of April if the government grant doesn't continue. And that's coming from Doug Claringbold and Janet Bell in First Group. And as Bryony knows, Mark Hotwood, who's also a First Group employee but runs the trains, the general manager, he did an excellent presentation about bus integration, but he made the point, the same point Brian is making, that the trains and the buses all need public subsidy. So I think we've really, I'm just listening. I've listened to the Northern Mayors, Peter, then I listened to the low music in our region from Dan, I've told him this, and Bill, if he's on this call, and Mike and the other leaders of the Southwest. Where's the political noise for our public transport system in London? Because now is the time that the region should speak. Whole of Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, Gloucestershire, Wiltshire. Got a minister here for the first time. Secretary of State lives here. Should be telling him, look, we're not getting the money. And I think that's the point I would make. Just in case you don't think Mark Harper gets it, Mark Harper's had buses cut in his own constituency. So the Ledbury to Newent bus, which he got some services restored on, has come back, but he's still fighting bus cuts in his own constituency. So I think we've really got to make the case. And Jesse Norman, the other minister, he's only up in Hereford. So first time in quite a few years, we've actually got West Country and Border Counties ministers. So I think we've got to really ramp this up. But I think a regional voice, otherwise, whatever money is available for buses, I think will be in the Midlands, and I think will be in the North. And I would not want that, or for, and the same for a local rail. Only final point was, we do need to do more bus for integration. We need to understand why we can't get Castle Carey Station, Southwest Coaches wants to know, I want to know why we can't get those buses into the station. And we need to work with Somerset Council and WECA, North Somerset, make sure we've got good station links. And I want to see the design finally of Taunton bus station and get on and put shovels in the ground, because I'm very worried at the 17th. Just to make sure we get as many shovels in the ground as possible. That's my points.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Brian Thomas of Yatton Parish Council, I see. I actually don't think we've met Brian, but welcome. You're muted at the moment.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can indeed, yeah.
Sorry, I was on muted. Thank you for inviting us to this Zoom call. We in Yatton now are circa 10,000 people, and we are growing. We've had 3 major housing planning applications approved, all rejected by the parish council and also North Somerset Council. So we're going to grow even further. But we now have had all our bus services removed, our local services to Clevedon and Bristol Airport, and also our main service to Bristol and also to Weston-super-Mare. I love your presentation. I thought it was very, very good, but we would really love to be able to do what you suggested and some of the things about promoting bus timetables, promoting bus services and usage. But we are really up against the wall. We have no bus services whatsoever to go anywhere. We feel very isolated in this village, and it's really now come down to, we understand the finance, we understand First Bus in particular cannot finance our bus services. We understand that North Somerset can't finance it, but the government are doing nothing about supporting this very, very large village in North Somerset to actually get us a bus service, which we desperately need.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. Nothing I can add to that, but I think you've made your point, and I'm sure it's been noted. Rosa Kell, I think you're from Wells, Rosa. You're muted at the moment.
Okay.
No.
Hi there. Hi there. Good evening. Yes, I'm definitely from Wales. I'm a resident, but I'm tonight representing Dennis, our local councillor, as well as myself and my interest. I've set up a group that supported the 126. It unfortunately has gone, and we've now got Libra running part of the route from Wells to Cheddar, extended to Axbridge. However, every car driver I've spoken to simply say, you don't have a bus for me to be able to use. It doesn't fit me going to work and getting back home within 2 hours of leaving work. You know, if I've got to sit at the bus station and waiting for 2 hours for the next bus, I'm not going to bother. So yes, we've retained the small service. However, to heavily promote that, we must get the full route back. We must do something to get that North Somerset section to agree to fund it. Or if we have to, as a Somerset resident, we have to fund it ourselves. In the summer, that route is so important for tourism.
Yeah.
Well, not only the summer. I mean, I'm an ambassador for Wales, and I do some touring here in Wales on about 3 times a month. And the number of people I've spoken to that come from Cheddar and further down who have taken holiday homes as late as sort of last week, and just I was concerned, how do I get back to my holiday home if the bus is gone? We've left the car at home. You know, Wales is a beautiful city to walk in. And it is. So we don't need the car. But suddenly we think we've got to go now, less than an hour in town, because we're going to miss the only bus that exists.
Yeah.
We've got to find a way around this, please. Help us.
Yeah.
Give us
Well,
ideas of how to promote and keep this route going, but more important, extend it.
I think that's the key thing, is extending it. And I hear suggestions that funding is going to be found to get it back in the new year, but that's yet to be confirmed. Thank you, Rosa. Dee Charles, where are you from, Dee?
Norton Fitzwarren Parish Council, just on the outskirts of Taunton. Firstly, I apologise I'm not on video because I'm currently in southwestern Spain, and it will use all my gigabytes if I actually have all the video on.
Well, thank you for joining us all the way from Spain. I bet it's a bit warmer and drier there.
It is, yes, it is. And sadly, we have been losing some bus services in this area as well, but that's another issue. What I'd like to ask is there any, I don't know if Diogo is still in the group, but the issue I'm having is I'm trying to find an answer in the Taunton area as to what actually constitutes a pound fare in the Taunton area. It's currently operating very nicely with the park and ride, which is good. But the issue we've got is that First Bus actually operate a Taunton area of their own. And a lot of our parishioners at the moment are aware of this. We've already had one problem where somebody got on the bus expecting to pay £1, only to find that the fare was over £3. And as I say, I'm trying to approach everybody that I can. Our district councillor, Andy Sully, Mike Rigby, the county councillor, but I don't seem to be getting any further forward. The only information we have been given lately is that an awful lot of our 11.9 million for the area is being spent on bus lanes, which really doesn't help anybody that's outside of the actual town centre. It may mean that you get to your destination across the town in 5 minutes less, because that's all it can do in a way. But we just can't get any answers about anything else.
Okay,
We need an actual definition of the area so we can let people know, and they're not going to get on the bus expecting to pay £1. The other issue is we're being told that we're going to be getting weekend and evening buses, but if in our particular parish, it's more of a problem because we're very close to Taunton town centre, and nobody's going to want to pay over £3 to go into Taunton for the evening when people not much closer into the town centre will only be paying £1. So I can see the scenario here is these buses are going to be put on, nobody's going to use them because of the cost, so we'll get the issue of, you know, use it or lose it as we're trying to push for here, and we'll lose the service because nobody's using it. So I think that's going to be a bit of a self-defeating exercise. I don't know if anybody can give any answers on that that's on the group, but I shall also be pushing Mr. Rigby and hopefully Bill Reevens to see if we can go get a definitive answer on this issue. Another quick question. The bus fare cap introduced from January of £2, is that going to be a single stage fare or a single journey fare or a return fare? Again, I don't have any information on that, which would be useful for our parishioners.
On the latter point of the £2 flat fare, my understanding is that it's a single journey, but the detail of that has not yet been passed down by Department for Transport to the local transport authorities. My understanding, and I know John Hassler on the call, so he may be able to add some more, is that there's still waiting to hear the precise area being covered by the £1 fare, and when it is to be introduced. I was talking to Mike Rigby about this some 10 days ago, and he was pushing to try and get it finalised, but it still hadn't yet been finalised. It's something which needs to be agreed with the bus operators, as it's not just a decision for the council to make. As far as bus lanes are concerned, that was a government decision. When they gave Somerset the 11.9 million, the government said most of this has to go on bus priority lanes, and only a relatively small proportion can go on the bus fare element of it. So that wasn't a Somerset County Council decision, that was a government decision. John, are you on the call still?
Yes, I am. Yes. Yeah, my understanding is that they are still working out the zone for the £1 fare, and the £2 will be the return fare. So, you know, I don't want to surmise that it will include any particular part of Taunton. I mean, it may well do. It might well include Bishop's Lydeard, Cotford, Norton Fitzwarren, Oak. I don't know, but that is what they're working out at the moment. What zone, whether it's going to be 3 miles from the centre of Taunton, 5 miles from the centre of Taunton, I don't know. They are working on it, and as you say, in the next month or so, we'll hear more.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Sue Burgess, where are you from, Sue?
Hello, Peter. Nice
Hi.
to see you again.
Thank you.
I know we've spoken before. I'm from West Camel, which is a little rural village about 6 miles from Yeovil. So Yeovil's our main town. We have 2 bus services a week. It actually sounds quite elaborate when you listen to people like Brian and Richard Harper. But it's a very, very limited service. So one is from Babcarry to Yeovil, the other one is from Pilton to Yeovil. The Pilton to Yeovil gives our residents here 1 hour and 3/4 in Yeovil, shopping time, or whatever they want to do. The Babcarry to Yeovil one gives them 2 hours. and that's it. That's just the 2 buses a week during the day, middle of the day, and there's nothing else. So our villagers themselves, I live on a mobile park. So we are about half a mile from the centre of the village. The villagers themselves have got used to not having a bus service, so they therefore don't bother. They've got their cars. They do something else. They're not interested in supporting a bus service. It's too infrequent. It's not long enough. It doesn't go to enough places. They have no interest whatsoever. The people on our park, however, are all of a certain age. A lot of them don't drive. And when it's only a little minibus anyway, it's only about a 12-seater. By the time it gets here, it's either full or there's just 1 or 2 seats that's available. So it's just really, my campaign is for the people on Orchard Park, which is half a mile outside of West Camel Village. Now, I can't see, listening to the plight of others, I can't see me being able to put forward a case for this. But if this bus service is dropped, these people will become totally isolated. They have no method of driving. They're all too old. They've given their license up, or they're too sick, or whatever. And I am at a loss as to even which area to approach this by. I know the villagers aren't interested, because that would mean an increased bus service, and that's not likely to happen. All I'm trying to do is try and fight for the bus service we've got to enable the people on Orchard Park to be able to at least get in and out of Yeovil. Anything else, they have to get a taxi for.
Are you involved with the Yeovil bus user group?
No, but I've listened tonight and I've made a note of them. I might actually contact them and see if they can offer any support, shall we say. I think that's probably what I'm looking for. I feel a little bit out on my own, and I'm sure a lot of the others do, listening to their story and reading the comments on the chat line as well. When you live in a rural area, a lot of the talk is of the plights of the towns. And that's bad enough. Yeah. When you talk about the rural areas, it's either minimum or non-existent.
Yeah, I agree. You're absolutely right. I suggest we'll pass.
Can I say hello?
Ah, yes, thank you, Linda.
Yeah.
I didn't think you would keep you quiet for longer.
I'm actually the lead of Yeovil Bus User Group. I've just looked up your Pilton one is actually a county council run service.
Yeah.
I didn't catch the other one. Oh, was it a 6?
That's the Bab Carry one, Bab Carry to Yeovil, and I think that's by it's on my notes somewhere.
Which number is it? What's the number?
5. Number 5.
Oh, number 5. Okay.
It's right, the 5 and the 8. It's the 5 and the 8. I've just looked.
Oh, it's 5 and 8.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
yeah, the Bab Carry one is the 5.
Okay, so 5 and 8. Yeah, I understand what it's like to live in a rural village. I was brought up in a very small village anyway. We had, I think it was 1 bus a week, and it was the ridiculous. It'd take you hours to get there, and then you get there and you have a short little time and you can't do anything and you have to come all the way back. Actually, hence why I'm now living in a town. I think what would be a good idea is to maybe talk to the county councillors, especially. I don't know who runs the 5. I've got a feeling that could be a community one.
Hang on, I've got that here.
They're both county councils.
Both Somerset.
Yeah. Oh, are they both county council? I thought one was run by a company.
Okay, so that's probably good. Some way to going, at least expressing how things are going and how you're feeling. It's a nightmare when you feel like you're not being listened to, or you just don't count, when actually you do count as much as every other person on here. And I can see other hands waving, and somebody nodding there called Claire, who's been there for ages.
Yes, I've spotted you, Claire.
I was in conversation with Mike Hewitson.
Right.
I was in telephone conversation with him, and I wrote him a letter to confirm everything that we'd said, and then everything just went quiet. This was in July, and I've not heard anything since. So I don't even know if he's still in the position.
Yes, he's still there, but I haven't heard from him myself. I've had a conversation about I think it was about a month ago, and I've not heard anything. I think he's a bit overwhelmed. I know that he went through COVID and so whether that's had something to do with his silence. I'll message him again, and your name's Sue. Do you mind if you find me on Facebook? I'm Linda Ann. So just drop me Linda, yeah, and Ann, and then drop me a message. Then I've got your details, and then we can converse that way. Okay, however, I've got to point out Claire there, who lives in a rural area because she's been banging around with her head. She needs to speak. I can't bear the hand anymore.
Yes. Thank you, Linda.
I'll catch up with you.
Don't go anywhere. I want you in a minute.
We'll go to Claire and then to Martin, who's had a virtual hand up for a long while.
Thank you.
But Claire, as you've been waving at me.
Hello, my name is Claire Kingston. I'm in a royal situation because I'm in Backham and Westcombe village, and there is no buses at all, none. And I've got a gentleman who's got heart disease, lung disease. I've got a child with autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. And for Mendip School, where my son is, the PFSA helped my partner with mental health to go to Mendip School once a week, and a slinky bus picks him up. And a lot of people in rural villages don't know about the slinky bus. And they Mike pays a £5 from West Pennant, from where I live at Westcombe to the Mendip School. There's not enough information about the buses. Where I live, I've only just come a councillor, so I'm a newbie because I was elected in May. So there is no buses what come through here. There's a gentleman who's in his 80s that walks from Backham to the nearest shop to get his groceries because his partner passed away and she was the only driver. I don't know where the bus stops are around here because there used to be one in Evercreech, but there's no signs up for that bus place. I don't know if there's any on Wanstro, on the main road to Wanstro to take you into Frome. But other than that, there's nothing around to say about any bus places at all. But when you're in a rural place, if there was small buses like it used to be, when I first moved into Jubilee Cottage, because I'm 49 now, and I moved in here when I was 21, because I'm the third generation in this house, and they stopped the buses because there weren't enough funding. If there was buses going through these rural places, that will bring in money because then people won't be driving their cars, they will catch the bus. And I've noticed there's a gentleman who's put on, I think it's the Evercreech Facebook page, where he's doing coach journeys to Poole, Liverpool, Christmas Park, Christmas markets for £20. And I'm with my son, it's hard to get out as it is. But I'm thinking about doing that to go out for a day with my son, and I don't have to worry about driving.
Yeah.
But my son would love to go on a bus, but there's none around. If you go to Shepton, I saw one bus today. Frome, I wouldn't even have a clue because there's nothing get towed in the rural sections where buses are.
Okay.
But for a slinky bus, I do praise them because not enough people know about those buses to help disabled people or people to get to hospitals, people to get to their, bits what's got mental health and disabilities and elderly people. But something needs to be more talked about.
Is there community cars?
No. That's what they call the slinkies. The slinkies is all to do with that. It's all to do with the slinkies. It is people that has retired from doing their work.
Claire, can I just interrupt? Next week, we are going to have a presentation by Somerset County Council, and we'll be writing to you about this tomorrow. But
thank you.
Somerset County Council are going to do a presentation on community bus services and other services that they provide. So these could be issues you might want to raise with them. We've got Natasha Bates, who's one of the senior officers from Somerset County Council, who's going to come along and talk to us. Martin, you've been very patient. And then I'll come to Tony and Martin Strauss, but Martin Cook, you're muted at the moment, Martin.
Can you hear me, sir?
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for your time, Peter. It's good that Councillor John Bentil of Wookey and Councillor Philip Wells of Wells is here. I'm a member of St Cuthbert Out. 2 or 3 years ago, the bus from Wells to Burnham-on-Sea, as you will know, came to an end. So there was a partnership arrangement with our 3 parish councils and also ones going along the B3139. So we've now got a running service using the Mendip Community Transport, and I think it's working very well. I don't know if you've got anything to say, John? You're muted. We can.
No, it's certainly used a lot actually, especially the bit from Wookey into Wells. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, it also related on Saturday. We've now got, there's 2 of those services. There is a 67, which goes Wells, Wookey Hole, Wookey, Wedmore, and the 67B just on Saturdays is just Wells, Wookey Hole, and Wookey.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, it's very good.
Good. Okay, well that sounds encouraging. Tony Rees, co-chair and founder of Somerset Bus Partnership. It was his idea that we should set up in the first place. Tony, over to you.
And this is fantastic to have 100 people here, to have some who are actually turned away because we would need to pay quite a lot of money to Zoom to be able to take more than 100. I think it's been wonderful. I know there's only 58 left here, but I'm going to say 1 or 2 things that are for all the 100 and hopefully will be on the recording. This was a meeting about what you can do. We've had a number of meetings about what buses have been lost, what are about to be lost, what we have already lost, the villages that haven't got any. We are interested in those ideas, but that wasn't actually the nub of tonight's meeting. I know there's a lot of anger around, and what we're trying to do tonight is turn that anger into action. There are things you can do. I would ask again that all of you here and those of you who've left the meeting early, really think of something you can do along the lines that Peter has said. I was going to mention our meeting next Monday when the county will be talking to us about Slinky. It's somewhat, in some ways, it's too successful. It's incredibly difficult to book because there isn't enough of it. But I would still say, like everything else we've talked about, it needs advertising. People need to know about it. They then need to know about the problems with it. And we then need to have meetings like the one we'll have on Monday, where we'll say that's fine, but there are more things it could do. I'd also like to promote Travel Watch Southwest's meeting at the end of next week, because part of that, and it was suggested in the title, is that we actually need to think about the way we fund buses. I've been saying this for 20 years. The central government paying money through local government, which it then cuts to the point where it can't afford it, is not a good way of funding buses, and we need to look at other ways. I'm very glad to hear about Mendip Transport. There are towns and villages that have actually taken some of this on. And I think we actually need to find other ways of doing some of the things that the council, the unitary authority, the new transport authority will not be able to support. We need to push, as we've said, everybody to find ways of announcing bus services that do exist, to fight against the arguments that say, well, that's all very well for you, but I haven't got a bus, or I've only got a bus here. We need to be positive at this moment in time. We all need to be positive and say, use what you've got, persuade others to use it. Yes, we need to keep pushing for getting improvements to the bus service, but at the moment, the crisis is that we're about to lose even more bus services unless we make them work.
Thank you, Tony. So I'll go to Martin and then Geraldine's iPad, so describe. Martin.
I'll be very brief. I tried to use Slinky myself, but discovered I was ineligible because I actually own a car. So what they're saying is that you can only use Slinky if you have no access to a car. I hope that's something we can raise next week, because you can't just decide to use the service.
Yeah. Okay, there's something for next week. Next week's meeting is at 7:30 on Monday, and it's a presentation on the Dial Ride service and the Somerset County Council service, and also their Think Travel portal. We will be emailing you. Geraldine's iPad.
Hi, I'm Geraldine. I'm from Chiltern Poland. I'm actually on the parish council. I'm on the 75 route from Glastonbury, well, Street now to Bridgewater. I don't think the bus companies do enough to make it possible for people to use the buses they do run. We have a classic example here on a Friday. The bus, the first service bus that isn't the college bus that goes into Bridgewater is invariably packed to the gunnels with people with their shopping trolleys, their walking frames, wheelchairs, all pensioners going in to do their shopping. They have started putting on a double-decker bus and expecting pensioners to go up to the higher level with their trolleys and things. If it's not a double-decker, it's the smaller bus with the 2 steep steps towards the back. Yeah. That service now, when it gets into Bridgewater on a Friday, people aren't getting on it because there are already 5 or 6 people standing. If it's a double decker, there are people standing on the lower deck because they can't get upstairs on a double decker. How is that encouraging people? They know how busy that service is. It's always been a really busy service. How can they justify doing something like that? That means that people that want to use the bus are staying at the bus stop and not getting on because it's not feasible for them to use that particular bus. It's ridiculous. People have complained. It's the only bus available. It's ridiculous. Added to that, our other big gripe out here is we've lost our last bus from the town. You can no longer get out of Bridgewater towards Street after 4:30 in the afternoon. So anyone that wants to work and use a bus service, they can't. The last one back through from Street is 8 minutes past 5. It's impossible to do a full day's work in either of the towns at either end of the service because you can't get home. It's ridiculous. So they're not encouraging people to use the buses.
I hear what you say.
Peter, I can answer that. You won't like the answer, but I will answer it because I
Go
made
ahead,
a
David. Thank you. David Redfall.
Unfortunately, First Group, which is a big company, it's got all these local names, but you know, we all know it's Buses of Somerset or Mendip or Dover. I can name the names, Curnow. They're all first. Western Railway, South Western Railway. But the issue is they're short of drivers and money resources from Somerset. So what they did is they took all the college buses off and brought a set of double deckers in from Bristol, and some came from Scotland. And then they put them on the routes across Somerset so they could merge the college services with the ordinary services. and that saves an awful lot of money and an awful lot of drivers. Barry Cash has just gone off our call, but the union rep for the Southwest was with us tonight. And the problem is that's where we are. And we've still got to get drivers into Somerset's depots. We are very short of drivers. As we speak tonight, Wells Bus Garage is 20 drivers short. Bath Bus Garage is 50 drivers short. Weston-super-Mare is the same. And even little Bridport, down where Bob Driscoll is, which runs the service to Yeovil, that is also short of drivers. So we've got to get more drivers, and then we can probably put on more buses. But it's a vicious circle because those buses have then got to have the subsidy put into them. But I totally agree with the idea that you reduce what was an evening service out of Bridgewater to the villages and out of Street. Well, that made the national news, and I think it's just preposterous. And you know, this is where do you allow private companies to run bus services without specification? And I think a lot of us, it's a pity we've lost our colleague from the unions, but I think this is where bus services should be specified by local authorities and then put out to tender. And in many cases, then the private companies can run them. I mean, but it's who runs them. It's just, we've got to have more public control over this situation. And this sort of thing is proving it. And I think even the Conservatives think we've got to have more public control over public transport. So this is the issue that I asked Mike Rigby when I first met him to get a review of what was done by that last set of bus cuts. And it also applied to Yeovil. And we've still not got back, just to make sure people are aware. The Y6 is saved on a different timetable. So it's Bridport to Yeovil. Bob's on the call if he's come in on it. But we are now out to tender with Dorset on the X11. And there's a couple of other services which go further out towards the Shaftesbury Wincanton Way, which South West Coaches run for Dorset. They're also being tendered. And the 81's out to tender. I understand any surplus money that Somerset's got from the concessionary passes is going to go into pay those higher tender prices, Peter, which are now inflation percent of 47%. But that's the answer. It's not the answer I want to give. It was a decision made by First Group and the government and drivers, but it's kept some services running, would have been completely cut in Somerset.
Thank you, David. And thank you to everyone who's still with us. We've got half what we had at the peak, but we have been going on for an hour and a half. So I'm going to bring the meeting to a close. We will send you copies of the slides. We'll also get round to putting this on YouTube, so you can play it repeatedly to your heart's content in years to come. But the important thing is to say we'll be inviting you to a meeting where we'll have a briefing about Slinky and community services, about the Somerset bus fleet and their travel portal. I think it's going to be a really interesting meeting. Tony Rees will be chairing it, and it's next Monday. So I hope to see a lot of you at that meeting. Now it's time to go and have a good night. Enjoy it. Thank you very much indeed.
Sorry, what time is the meeting next Monday? Sorry.
7:30.
Right, I'll write that down before I forget it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, Peter.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you get my email address on the thing? Because it keep coming up, so you didn't get it.
Are you talking to me?
The one who's been asking for emails. Hold on. Tube link and man. We have your email address. Yes, Claire. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Right.